serious, what job is always misrepresented in movies and TV shows? And what is it really like? Story 1. Nurses and doctors are horribly portrayed. Most of the tasks performed by docs on TV shows are delegated to nurses or techs. As an ER or internal medicine physician, you won't be scrubbing in for your patient's surgical procedures. You stay in your department. There's little to no sexy time in on-call rooms. And for the love of God, you don't shock a flatline. Edit. So this is my first high-ranking comment. So to educate, here is a screenshot of what happens in the ER when your heart stops. And here is a good yellow 5 of why you can't shock a flatline. Edit 2. Also, I'm drunk at this point and on mobile, so of course ish is way messed up. Feel free to correct me, but have mercy on my nussy Reddit soul. Edit 3. Drunk vs autocorrect. Story 2. Many are lawyers are 1. Most of it is long hours of mind-numbing research and drudge work. They're not always in court wowing people with insightful cross-examinations and brilliant closing arguments. Story 3. This isn't really a job, but it's related. Students, I will never understand how people cast like 26-year-olds to play high school sophomores or some. In an actual high school, half of the people look like they're about 12. Also, passing time is 5 minutes tops. None of that 20-minute montage bullshit where the characters have time to do anything but haul to their next class because it's on the other side of the building. Bullying in high school isn't a group of football players pointing at some kid in glasses and going, haha, loser. Absolutely no one does that. It's subtweeting and whispering and saying to wind people up and make it look like it was their fault. It's baffling how much they get wrong. Edit. Alright. So apparently it's infinitely more convenient to hire older actors for financial professional purposes. Thank you guys for the explanation. That makes sense now. Story 4. Most forensic law shows where the same characters act as detectives, go out in the field and collect evidence, take it back to the lab and analyze it themselves, and then bring down the bad guy in court. They'd have you think that the entire chain of custody is one person when it's really like 10 different jobs rolled into one. Story 5. Fire suppression sprinkler systems. A pretty common trope is that one character will activate a fire alarm pull station, setting off the sprinklers throughout the building in order to get out of class, work, etc. Pulling the fire alarm will never set off the sprinklers. The sprinkler system works like this. The sprinkler pipes are filled with water when the system is installed. There's a pump on the system, which keeps the water in the pipes constantly under pressure. The sprinkler heads are just an opening in the pipe and a small, star-shaped plate, which causes the water to spray in all directions. There's a glass tube which plugs the opening in the sprinkler head. The glass tube is filled with a liquid which expands a lot when heated. When a glass tube is heated enough, the liquid expands to the point where it shatters the glass. With the glass broken, it can no longer plug the opening in the sprinkler head. The water then sprays out. The only way more than one head can activate at a time is if they are all heated enough to allow liquid to shatter the glass plug in each. Pulling a fire alarm station will set off the fire alarm throughout the building, but it will not set off sprinklers. Source: I install fire alarm systems. Story 6. All mechanics are secretly super smart talented and are only working as a mechanic to make ends meet due to the tragic circumstances in their life that made THRM give up on their dreams. Most mechanics I know are pretty happy with where they are in life and enjoy their jobs. Story 7. Archaeologists and paleontologists know what's fun, flying to places like Egypt or Mexico to find ruins. Know why is not fun. Bug bites, heat stroke, going for days without a bath in 50-degree with humidity weather, sunburn, digging for hours, decoding pictographs that were written and eroded thousands of years ago, being overshadowed by someone who pretends to be the sole person on the expedition, being tossed aside by someone who wants to advance their career and attempts to take credit for your stuff, accidentally breaking something, the dirt, the heat, and did I mention the stink? Story 8. Long-time EMT here. Most of the stuff we do is really boring. Probably 95 of the calls I run are BS. You probably wouldn't believe how many times when I ask, so why did you call 911, that I get told, well, I got Medicaid, and if I go to the hospital in an ambulance, it'll get seen quicker. I've picked up people for things like headaches, back pain, knee pain, toothaches. One of the most memorable BS calls I've ever ran in my life is a guy that called 911 because he was working on his van and it fell off the jack. He wasn't under the van at the time, but standing 10 to 15 feet away, and the noise scared him. Yes, really? Story 9. Scientists. They are often portrayed as being universal problem solvers who know all the sciences and are super smart. In reality, scientists have highly specialized expertise, don't know much outside their own field, are more intelligent than average, but not much more. Story 10. Any computer programming job, whether it be hacking into the mainframe, or let me code you up something quick that will do the trick, it's always just people bashing their hands against the keyboard. They never show the planning, requirements documents, licensing the software or tools you need, waiting for approval, working in a team, anything like that. I stop watching shows when a character just develops a fix that saves the day in like 40 seconds, because that's more unrealistic than if that person flew around the world in reverse time like Superman. Story 11, the music industry, is made up of guys going from show to show, just hoping to hear some unknown band that they can offer a big money contract on the spot. These music industry people are always on the lookout for a hot new sound, and certainly not interested in something that sounds like everything else, and thus proven to be marketable. Story 12 writer, they always portray them as disorganized or drunk or out of touch with reality and successful, but this is rarely the case. It's lots of hard work slipped in between a day job, so we can put food on the table. And if you're drunk all the time, you never get writing finished. You may turn out a rough draft that way, but it's virtually impossible to edit to a publishable draft that way. And some of us don't drink or use drugs at all. Story 13, farmers growers, they're usually portrayed as ignorant rustics, lacking in knowledge about much outside their farms. Meet most of them now, and you'll find that very few fit that stereotype. Now most have agricultural degrees with environmental science backgrounds. While old-school methods are not completely obsolete, these modern methods and advanced knowledge have helped the average grower in all areas of their livelihood. I have a hay supplier who actually works for Cargill full-time, and his hay operation is so technologically advanced, it is amazing. The knowledge of each field soil analysis is in-depth and consistent, and quality control is very accurate. Story 14, astronomer here. We never really go to an observatory on a mountaintop, let alone actually look through the telescope anymore. There are still some astronomers who do visit the observatory perhaps once a year or so, but for the majority of us, you're doing remote observing most of the time, or having others take the data for you and downloading it onto a computer for analysis. Then we just sit in our offices all day analyzing it and writing up what we've found. There's also a hell of a lot fewer aliens than you'd think for watching television. Story 15, doctors' misconceptions because of Hollywood about healthcare 1. That all female doctors wear high heels in hospital 2. That every doctor bangs every other doctor in hospital 3. That at the end of every day in the hospital, chasing cars start playing and you narrate the significant things that happened that day in your head. 4. That as soon you stub a toe and go to the hospital, you'll get hooked up to a heart rate monitor and get infusion. 5. That a heart rate monitor will be all you need to recognize serious events for patient 6. That a heart rate monitor makes the traditional long beep when heart stops. 7. That you have to fire adrenaline right into the heart looking at you. Quintin 8. Hollywood portrays U.S. healthcare about love and patient care, even though U.S. healthcare is centered around squeezing the most money out of those that have insurances. You can literally fly a retour to Spain and have a holiday and get a hip replacement in Spain for say money 9. That most of healthcare isn't just waiting a lot as a patient, especially in ER. 10. That scanning with MRI or CT will always result in a correct diagnosis. 11. That most of patients are young and healthy except for that dramatic seizure or sickness. Most patients in real life are old to very old and are smokers, overweight, etc. The young and healthy ones with sudden diseases are a rare sighting. 12. That every doctor has all the time in the world. 13. Comas are very common, and people wake up from it all the time with no consequences. 14. That life in hospital is not monotonous. Story 16, I don't see software QA come up in movies TV very often, but when I do, it seems to be along the lines of let's play this completely constructed, finished, immersive video game, and check to make sure it's as fun as we thought it was going to be. We'll have a blast as long as there aren't any horrible AIs waiting to torture us. Software testing is a lot more of like, do this really specific sequence of actions that we found 2 years ago to break the system. Does it break the system again? Nope. Good, okay, now do this other really specific sequence. Does it break the system again? Yep, okay, log it, document it. Now do this third really specific sequence. Story 17, university professors. For starters, a lot of university faculty is not full-time tenure. They're underpaid contract faculty that's probably significantly below the poverty line and are fighting tooth and nail for something resembling job security. It's also not a whole lot of inspirational lectures that change the lives of their students, though that does happen, and then you just head off to your glorious mahogany-filled office to do some light reading writing before heading home for the night. It's also a lot of behind-the-classroom scenes work, including lesson planning prep work, administrative committee work, personal research report book, writing conference presentations, peer reviewing, editing, etc. Anything that will help to make a name for yourself in your respective field. Some sessional part-time instructor friends work 60 and get paid less than $20,000 a year. Some former tenure colleagues of mine work 80 hours a week not all though. Story 18 Social workers in the UK. TV would have you believe that social workers can just take children into care for the minimal of reasons. They never portray that social workers have to amass evidence, make an application to the court, and present their evidence. Only then can a decision be made and order granted, and this decision is made by a judge and not the social worker. We have a TV show called EastEnders, and they portray social workers terribly. It's lazy writing that just feeds into the misconception. A popular show, as this could really challenge these misconceptions, but they just feed the ignorant. Story 19 Librarians on TV are usually depicted as people who sit at a desk all day, reading, and shush people. Librarians in real life do wildly different tasks depending on the kind of library they work at. The librarian sitting at the desk in a public library will sometimes read or browse the internet at downtime, but it's only because there's nobody there looking for help or reference. In the back office, there's usually another librarian or two who are planning future programs, selecting materials to purchase license, weeding out materials that aren't circulating, planning displays, or managing the department's budget. At the library I work at, the librarians rotate time at the reference desk. Librarians at a college library will be assisting with research, conducting research of their own, running a class to teach bored undergrads how to use this, that, or the other database, as well as some of the above tasks like managing purchases, or more usually managing licensing or budgeting. A librarian at a museum or archive might be trying to figure out how to digitize a rare book without destroying it or how to best catalog a map. Some librarians do a lot of the above, but with additional training and degrees like a legal or medical librarian, and so they never interact with the public. Story 20 Soldiers. Not one myself. But if Reddit is correct, it's very long stretches of boredom interrupted by very short moments of danger. Also, there's lots of fapping apparently. Story 21 Flight Attendant. It's portrayed as such glamorous life. It can be, after 30 years of seniority, it's a lot of early mornings with no sleep and a lot waiting in airports. Story 22 I noticed this while watching a lot of Christmas movies on Lifetime and Hallmark jobs in advertising. In movies, they're always preparing for a giant presentation right before the holidays and have no time for anything else when in real life, a campaign for the holidays would have already been sold months ago and already running. Story 23 Chefing. Going on 10 years in the industry. I've heard stories secondhand, but I've yet to work with a head chef who really subscribes to the angriviolent shouty chef trope. This would be an HR shitstorm for most reputable places, and the only dudes I've met who think this kind of behavior is something to aspire to are new and are just unimportant wankers. Not to say things don't get a bit heated, but it's nothing like what Ramsey and co sell their image on. There's a lot of addiction, though. Story 24 Not so much a job, but going to jail. You always see 2 or 3 friends put in the same cell or something. If anything, when you get to jail, you might wait an hour tops in a drunk tank with a friend. But after that, you will be booked, separated, and locked down on your own. There is no grace period with a phone and your friends standing around. Story 25 Teaching. We are mainly not idealistic weavers of imagination and dreams, sadists who hate kids, or frustrated meth-cooking geniuses. We are a motley crew who generally got into teaching as a second or third career option and stayed on the wages as we enjoy the holidays and the interaction with the kids. The idealistic, do-gooding types normally quit fairly fast because they can't cope with the copious bureaucratic or the harrowing child protection meetings that were oddly missing from Dead Poet Society. Also generally underrepresented are the levels of mental illness alcoholism, the way your life morphs into a countdown to the next weekend holiday, and the fairly rife shagging of colleagues. Edit the most accurate representation has probably been the old British show Teachers, and that had zebras running down the hallways. Story 26, my favorite, is when I see a lab setting in a show, and there are always beakers filled with some kind of colored liquid, and it's boiling for no apparent reason. I have only worked in a couple labs, but if I saw a beaker with a weird color boiling, then I would probably be concerned, especially if it's not under a hood. The hazardous waste at my last job always came out pink, and as nice as it was to look at, I'm pretty sure you don't want that boiling for no reason. Story 27, I feel like every sitcom had a plot line where the bored housewife decides to become a realtor and is instantly amazing at it. Wouldn't mind hearing from actual realtors about that. Story 28, I've been rewatching early seasons of Friends, and it seems anytime Ross gets a call into work, it's to adjust a display. Something tells me a paleontologist has somewhat higher responsibilities. Story 29, I remember an episode of Friends where Phoebe got a job in a call center and sat in a small room at a desk with a regular OL telephone, a pencil, and a legal pad. At the very least, she should have had a headset and a computer. Story 30 Barista. People think you're either a pretentious hipster working for the fun of it and the free coffee, Or you're some kind of coffee snob, and this is just a passion. It's food service like anything else, with the added bonus of a 4:45 a.m. clock-in time. I'm not saying it's on a par with working on an oil rig, but it's certainly not fun or glamorous. What makes it most annoying is the number of people who show up to work in a cafe and are then stunned to discover they're expected to clean and restock and schlep like any other gig. Story 31. Attention. Serious tag notice jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit message compose. Tor AskReddit if you have any questions or concerns. Story 32. Pastors. They often do not get a lot of time shown, and it is made to seem that all they do is sit around and read their Bible in a random one. Often they work over 40 to 50 hours a week doing a lot of different things. They will do anything from clean the bathroom to visit a dying widow, writing a sermon, to balancing the church's finances, and a lot of time overseeing different ministry boards and programs that are happening. Story 33. The military. Very few films get it right. Watch any war film with a combat vet and they'll pick it apart. It's usually the little things that bother us. In combat, you're filthy, yet everyone in the movies is spot clean. When I was deployed, no one showered for 4 to 6 months. Also, nobody wears dog tags besides Boots' new guys. But in every movie, you have some shirtless dude walking around with his tags dangling from his neck. In real life, almost everything is semi-auto. But in the movies, everything is fully auto. Even the M16S and M4S. During a scene in the Hurt Locker, you see one Humvee driving down the street. Never gonna happen. Anytime a vehicle goes outside the wire, it's a full convoy of up to a dozen armored Vics. There's a lot of things wrong with that movie, but I still enjoy it, etc., etc. Story 30. For, I don't know if always is the right word, but the couple of episodes I've seen of escape rooms on TV are super cheesy. I've worked as a game master in escape room, the disembodied voice person that slides you clues. A lot shows that escape room episodes only show people getting 5 keys to escape the room. While this is the case for some lower-end escape rooms, the majority of them are way more complicated with better puzzles, and the game master does not get mad yell at you if you need help. We generally try to help you out, especially if you're a corporate group. Story 35. Teachers. These days we high school teachers don't stand in front of the room, holding some book and quoting literature while our students dutifully take notes. We desperately try to engage all of the students by catering to each of their learning styles, making activity-based lessons, and flitting around the room like sparrows on uppers to check on everyone and make sure they're at least pretending to pay attention. And good Lord is Clara from Doctor Who, just the worst teacher I've ever seen on TV. Story 36. Accountants always being portrayed as antisocial and never shown having any fun. In actuality, our business depends on us bringing in new clients and constant expansion. This means a lot of face-to-face meeting and different social events. We also follow the mantra of work hard, play hard. For all the long hours and high-stress work we do, we need to have some major releases partying. Story 37. Truck driving. Media portrays it as nothing but driving interspersed with truck stop diners and motels. Media portrays truckers as giving hitchhikers rides or picking up hookers. Media also portrays truckers as smelly old guys who may or may not rape you. While there's a lot of driving, there is also a ton of stuff that happens in between. Interacting with customers, paperwork, maintenance, cleaning trailers in between loads, trip routing and planning, coordinating with driver managers and load planners. Drivers, we call ourselves drivers, not truckers, don't eat at diners or restaurants daily, and most keep food in the truck. Many even have small fridges and stoves. Nobody sleeps in a motel unless their truck is broken down. It's very rare that a movie or TV show actually shows the sleeper berth of a truck, and my friends and family are often surprised when they find out I only sleep in the truck. Picking up a hitchhiker or hooker is grounds for termination if you're a company driver, and pretty much every driver I've ever met is disgusted by prostitution. Thankfully, there's only a few truck stops in the country where you'll find prostitution, and they are easily avoided. There are some older guys still out there driving, but they're all mostly very gentlemanly Midwestern farmer or Southern types. There's a fair amount of middle-aged dude bros who have a wife and kids and are into football and beer, like any blue-collar non-trucker type. There's also been a huge influx of younger guys who spend their free time derping around on Reddit while watching anime or playing video games in their truck. Guess which one I am, LOL? Story 38. Office work. Most shows and films either have a group of people with lots of witty banter, possibly even having causal with one another, that or they break and become free spirits. See Fight Club. Office Space, American Beauty, office work and reality just tend to be really dull, monotonous work. There is no moment of freedom. Just tedious work. Story 39 Construction. We are not all a bunch of lazy, uneducated dudes who catcall every woman who walks past. I have a double major in sociology and human physiology. Got into construction because it's a profession with money raining from the sky where I live, and you get paid to exercise. There's a reason why AI will never replace certain areas of construction. They require creativity, problem solving, and the skills to address the problem. Not to mention discussing the work with the owner of the property. On my site, I'm the only guy out of 30 who has no girlfriend or child. These guys take their limited sick days to care for their kids. We often don't say good morning to a woman walking by because we know it could be misconstrued as objectification just because we wear tool belts. Story 40 Counselors. For sure, I wish my day entailed sitting in a nice chair while listening to somebody rich tell me their issues, then being paid $200 after an hour. I wish, man. Story 41 All of them. I genuinely doubt that you'll find anyone from any profession who doesn't cringe at how Hollywood takes the rare if ever glamorous aspects of someone's job and makes the norm 100 of the time and completely skips over the nitty-gritty daily grind. Story 42 Being a trader on the New York Stock Exchange. I worked there for a while, and it is not the crazy, wild, screaming environment that people think it is. Instead, it's a rather quiet floor full of people in booths just making calls and occasionally walking through the floor. It's more of a soundstage than a work environment. Story 43, I used a model, and when I tell these girls who are on magazine covers have beer bellies from alcoholism and yellow teeth from cigarettes, it's not about beauty at all. Charisma gets you far if they can just mask your face and make you it in for a few seconds at a time. Story 44 Sales. You don't earn repeat business by making deals that hurt your customers. Sales is making a good deal for everyone. There are some bad apples, but that's true of any profession. Story 45 My experience is mainly nannying. I've nannied for a number of families. In many nanny movies, the parents are detached from their parenting role and seem to hand that completely over to nanny. IRL, most parents who hire nannies just have full-time work and are still very involved and interested in their children's lives. Note I said most. I know some parents may actually not care, and that's sad. Most still do. Story 46 Hacking is always glamorized and with immediate results. In reality, it takes time, and there's lots of text to look at. Not so much with the GUI graphical user interface. Story 47 Teacher here. We do not work 800 AM, 300 PM. This couldn't be farther from the truth. I love the television show New Girl. It is humorous and the characters are awesome, but no teacher could ever lead the life of luxury that Jessie lives. Even as much as she decries her circumstances, my colleagues and I wake up at 600 AM to get to work by 645 because school starts at 730 and we have to clear our rooms of the turmoil from the previous day. I teach through the day and try to start grading at around 330, but on average 7 to 10 students bombard me with seemingly dire concerns. Even though I rage within every time they ask a question I clearly covered several times in class. I'm ecstatic that they came to me in the first place. I try to start grading again at 500 PM. However, by 515 without fail, a student calls in distress about life and school, and even though 80 of our 1-hour call is about life, I'm excited that the student is finally clear on their HW assignment by the end of our conversation. Now, it's only 6, so I'm good, right? Nope. My inner voice chimes in. Hey there, you haven't eaten since yesterday. Do something, eat, respond to emails while watching TVO. I watched 3 episodes of New Girl. It's now 730. 3 hours of grading 10:30. Revise the next day's lesson plans 11:30. Just 2 more episodes of New Girl 12:30. I have to wake up in 5-12 hours. Finally accept this reality and fall asleep by 130 AM. Wake up at 6 AM. Rinse, wash, repeat. Story 48 Rock and roll roadies are shown just partying left and right like drug-addled idiots. Their job is a lot more serious. They have the artist's life in their hands by hanging tons of equipment over their heads. Also, when the show is done, the artist leaves to party guess who has to load the truck. Story 49 Every photographer in movies and TV are either super cool people that show up, snap a few photos, and leave, or they're super creepy perverts with secret creep shots of their crushes that are later seen, but are somehow so good that it causes the people in the photos to swoon. What you never see is anyone using a flash meter, Someone trying to figure out why one of the multiple strobes isn't firing, the constant haggling over prices, the also constant of not paying that much, it'll have my Uncle Bob shoot my whole wedding, or the horrible gut-wrenching moment of getting home from a job and realizing that one of your SD cards took and you just lost a good chunk of your work. Story 50, anything with military drones. I'm a former sensor operator on the MQ-1 Predator. My job was to operate the cameras, track targets, and guide the missile with a laser beam in the rare chance we went kinetic. Movies and television would have you believe that every mission results in missiles being fired. I flew about 400 missions in Afghanistan alone and only shot once. I had about a half-dozen near opportunities, but the reality is that so many factors and other pieces of intelligence have to line up to take a shot. I had a top Taliban commander and his lieutenants under my crosshairs for a couple hours once, and the pilot and I ran at least a dozen practice runs, just in case we were asked to shoot. Never happened. People with a lot more rank decided it was more beneficial to keep tabs on them all and gather more intel. Another time I watched the Taliban launch mortars at another village because they refused to pay their protection money. Pilot and I were seconds away from putting a missile on the mortar tube, and 3 guys, when they grabbed the tube, dashed 10 meters and threw it in the tree line and split 2 different directions. Turned out the Army helos got a close despite the JTAC Joint Terminal Air Controller. Guy on ground, who gives us the go, ahead to fire in this instance telling them to stay the away. Taliban heard the rotors of the helicopter and ran into a nearby village they weren't shooting at. I tried to follow, but it happened so fast they were lost in the populace. 90 of the job was sheer boredom, running checklists, operations checks, practicing attack scenarios, scanning routes for IEDs, defensive firing positions, and choke points. And the worst thing of all, watching a compound for hours for patterns of life, especially at night. The most exciting thing you might see is what I call a DVSD, Darth Vader taker, in black hot infrared. A male will exit his mud house looking like Darth Vader with his man dress on, walk to a point in his walled-in yard, squat, and leave a glowing black against the cooler white background in infrared. I have seen more of this than anyone should, but that won't make it into an episode of Homeland, NCIS, or into a Bourne movie. ISIS was the only thing that made the job interesting. I flew missions in the early days of us fighting against them, first just to gather intel, then to actually attack. Take that 90 I mentioned before and reverse it. 90 awesome missions doing great work, and 10 boredom of transiting across empty desert back to base. This is one of my alternate accounts, different from my main, so it may be one of the first posts on it, but I thought the name fit for this response. Whenever they touch anything nuclear or radioactive, it is always very funny. They never make any sense whatsoever. It's just not as dangerous as in the movies, and the contamination doesn't get all over the place, even if it's run down or unattended. It's really a slow job where they preach safety. Story 51, nurses. In most movies and TV shows, they are basically the doctor's assistants, or even worse, portrayed as less skilled in the medical field than a doctor. In real life, nurses work side by side with doctors, but have their own specific responsibilities and fields of work. Story 52, science researchers. They're always on the brink of fantastic discovery, spending their days connecting concepts with red yarn in a faculty office. Then one day they take a break and get a glimpse of some shape or object, or their kid says something that gives them a revelation, and they rush off to campus to immediately test it, and eureka, diseases are cured, etc. In reality, it's daily endless toil of cell culturing, grant writing, extraction, supplies budgeting, and ordering, methods, research, and failure. A few years will pass, and you'll scrape together enough novel data to piece together a paper that will maybe introduce one new idea related to a minuscule component of a concept so large and complex that it makes your head spin like cancer research. Just look up pathways of human cancer for a glimpse. Then remember that none of these are exactly similar, and it depends on the cancer cell type. Story 53, farm hands. Yes, we are normally strong and rugged. No, we aren't generally good-looking. There's a big difference between screen dirty and being covered in cow and rain. Story 54, forensic scientists. They're always portrayed as going out in the field and using cutting-edge technology to solve crimes beyond a shadow of a doubt, or working on individual cases. In reality, we are pretty locked to the lab processing evidence for dozens of different cases at a time, and we never go to crime scenes except on very rare occasions and rely on detectives to bring the physical and biological evidence to us. It's much more about keeping detailed notes, writing reports, and prepping with the DA on a case. Also, court is much more boring. I've seen hour-long testimony which was just vetting an expert's background to satisfy one of the legal teams that a witness is an expert. Story 55, beekeepers. I work for the world's largest bee company. We have many locations spread across the U.S. Between March through June, we split around 40K hives and end up with 110K hives all carried by hand. Where we do this, the heat is a real pain in the down south when you have to wear bee suits. Then moved out to another state to get them ready for the honey season. Then it's summertime when it's time to gather the honey. Boxes stacked 5-7 high, so 7 to 8 feet tall, weighing around 40 to 80 pounds each with 70 hives in each yard. In the wintertime, it's not so bad no bees, but just repair boxes, sort frames from good to bad. Overall, it's a fun job with all the traveling and new places you get to see. Story 56 mail rooms, piles of white envelopes, terrible lighting, those weird suction things that you put mail up in, dangerous-looking employees. Really the only thing that is accurate about how they're portrayed is the lack of windows. Other than that, it's actually pretty nice in here once in a while. Sometimes it gets pretty hectic, but really most of the time, it's pretty boring, and we're killing time playing cards or chatting. Story 57 museum staff. Apparently Hollywood thinks a museum worker greet and tour visitors, acquire artworks, restore and authentify them, organize exhibitions and fundraisers, and go on worldwide adventure and fight Nazis part-time. Truth is a bit more boring. And we don't have access to all the facilities at every hour of the day and night, depending how we see fit, ha ha ha. That's fiction, lol. Story 58 politics. It's always this very serious, overt body of people moving like a well-oiled machine. Often at the say-so of one person or group of people, there's almost a universal agenda that everyone seems to think is the crisis of action that everybody is focused moving on. Spat seems sporadic and largely personal. In reality, it's a shitty, discombobulated mess. There are a huge mix of politicians from every walk of life and every possible personality. Some with complexes, some who just come to do a job, some who are trying to save people, some who are trying to fix financial systems. They fight over everything from personal to business to politic. They delight in antagonizing each other, however, whenever they can. To that point, taking action on anything is damn near impossible and is often neutered and revised until it has become a pointless, costly token action that is only a pale shadow of its initial intention. It's an embarrassing nightmare. And one of the biggest reasons is that the two-party system pretty much decides what everybody thinks before they even hear the ideas. Janitors are quite happy in their jobs. It's not a suicidal job, I love it. Great hours, no boss watching over me. And unpaid, well, I feel sorry for the careerists I clean after. They look so miserable. Oh. Story 59 general business writers write about what they know. As a screenwriter, you spend a lot of time pitching ideas to producers. So the make or break in most writers' work lives is the big presentation, since that is what they know and what causes stress in their work lives. So any show that has the protagonist in whatever business environment needing to have the make or break in their line of work plot point, the big presentation. Story 60 fingerprint analyst here. AFIS is not a miracle worker. Fingerprints, especially partial from crime scenes, are not automatically matched in seconds. It's actually a tedious job. We take hours, sometimes days, analyzing a single fingerprint pair. Also, most of the latents on crime scenes are horrible smudges, not those beautiful sets of ridges we see in TV. Most are inconclusive or useless, but we try and work hard because sometimes we can help. Story 61-1. Placing a drop of blood on a slide and looking at it under the microscope, then diagnosing a rare disease. First of all, it has to be specially spread onto the slide, fixed, dried, and stained. Second, there's a short list of diseases you can diagnose from simply looking at a slide under the microscope. Source lab tech for 16 years too. Medical examiners eating a sandwich while examining a body. This one really irritated me.